yesterday we had a first panel with tackling a bit the next generation challenges and specifically, what were the issues they were facing with those, as Christian said, with those Polycrisis. Now, today, I would like really to address concrete actions we are doing, and I'm happy to see that there are more senior people than during the yesterday Space Generation Advisory Council panel, because we just realized that basically there were many young people, and today it's nice to see that we are all engaged, and it's not only the new generation who is engaged in this fight, but we are all engaged, and whatever the generation. So with no much ado, I want to call my distinguished guests to come and join me here. So first, I have the pleasure of welcoming Laurence Monnoyer-Smith from CNES, here the head of sustainable development at CNES. Thank you for being with us. So you represent a space agency. Then Thomas Marceau, again, head of sustainability, representing more the industry side, Ariane Group. Thank you. I want to call an engineer and a great specialist in water, Mr. Jean-François Donzier, Secretary General and former General Director of the International Office for Water, Global Alliance for Water and Climate. Great specialist in water. Thank you for being with us, Professor. Hilde Roth, Senior Vice President, Climate and Sustainability at Equinor. Thank you. So nice to have you with us, Hilde, because you're outside the space world, even though, of course, your company uses space images on the field, and you will be telling us a bit what concrete actions you're putting in place. And last but not least, Professor Laetitia Thirion-Lefebvre, coming from one of the leading engineering schools in France, professor in remote sensing, and one of the unique engineering schools having remote sensing in their first year of engineering. So thank you for being with us. So, well, thank you again, all of you. I think we have a very rich and diverse panel, as you can see. And I would like already to address you, Professor, because you are dealing on a daily basis with this new generation. How do you ensure this new generation is prepared to be confronted with this climate change? How are they reacting? And what concrete, things are you putting in place at your university?
Thank you, Maria Gabriela, for this question. It's true that it is a clear demand of our students to be prepared. It's our responsibility to answer them to this question. And maybe to better set up the context, I propose first listening to a first video extract from a master's degree's graduation in France.
Now, on to the parents, managers, alumni, and to all those who might think we don't have enough experience to really understand. Don't leave us to face these challenges alone. Climate and biodiversity are not reserved to your children. Learn about it. Tackle it. Let's upskill together. And if you are already in positions of power in which we could be one day, transform your companies today, because every ton of CO2 matters.
Yes, do not leave us facing alone these challenges. What a call. What a call, what a responsibility for us. So these future generations need us. They need our support, but how to accompany them? This is exactly, I think, the goal of this roundtable. Actually, it's my daily job in my lab. I'm a professor in remote sensing, as you say, and I'm supervising PhD students in order to study forests, for instance, oceans. And actually, we supervise maybe 5-6 students per year, PhD students. It's not enough. Clearly, we have only a lucky few students with them. So the question was how to increase this number of students and how to increase our impact. And to do that, I will illustrate my answer with three examples. So first, we propose what could be seen as a regular course, academic course at Centrale Supélec, but actually it is different. We are not only giving them, it's not a course about climate change. We are not delivering information to them because they already know a lot about it. But what we are doing is that we try to empower them, to make them able to process these space data, like in the Copernicus program, so that they can observe and measure, for instance, deforestation throughout the world. It would not have been possible alone. We benefited, as you all do actually, from the support of the European Union, which developed the Copernicus program and delivers for free remote sensing data of the Earth. But how to reach more students, more colleagues? This leads me to my second example. We developed in collaboration with the European Space Agency and ESA Lab on climate change and space exploration. It took time. It required discussions. We had to convince other professors to join us. But now, a new teaching and research activity exists on circular economy. Is it enough? Probably not. When we listen to these students, as Anne-Fleur Legal that you just heard at HEC, during their graduation ceremony, a lot of students expressed their anxiety and their anger. Anxiety because they do not feel enough prepared. They do not feel sometimes prepared at all. They reject their diploma. And anger because they feel alone.
Quite violently, as a matter of fact. You have some examples in France, where they rejected their diploma.
Several ones. This is a clear crisis, actually. And this brings me to my last example. We are working now to a dedicated version of our engineering courses over 3 years, where ethics, sociology, philosophy, local economy, and ecology, for instance, are now parts of the technical problems our students have to solve. Engineers, like maybe most of you in this room, have to rethink the way to reformulate the problems. They have to integrate the needs of society in terms of health, food security, employment, for instance, local employments. Your technical choice, their technical choices have an impact. And again, we cannot do it alone. It is not enough to have the approval of our hierarchy. We need them to be committed. We need them to accept, to try for real, maybe to fail, and to try again. You may be surprised or maybe not, but even if we only talk about teaching today, for me, we have to face money and administrative issues as well. At that point of my career, I strongly believe that the first step is to properly set up our fundamental objectives and to regularly check that all our decisions and actions are aligned with them. My fundamental objective as a professor is to innovate and to transmit, to help this future generation to face with us the challenges to come. To do that, we are strongly motivated, but we need money and we need people.
Thank you for that, and thank you for being so direct about the fact that we need people, engagements, money, and thank you for having mentioned a word which I like, which is ethics. We had some discussions with some colleagues in the last 2 days about ethics, but it's a very important one, and therefore I would like now to transition to Thomas. Thomas, you are part of, let's say, the launchers, producers industry, one of the industries which has a very visible impact, let's say, on the environment. I understood last year, in 2022, you had some severe events, weather events,
on our site,
affecting your site in Kourou, etc. You can tell us a bit maybe about that. And what did it trigger within your employees? Because it did trigger something, and maybe you can tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, just before getting to that question, you mentioned the visible impact of the launcher industry, and it's true, it's a visible impact. I mean, a launcher, it emits a lot of smoke, it's noisy, it's a flash, it's a very powerful event, so it's like the tip of the iceberg, but that shouldn't prevent us from taking care about our own impact along the whole supply chain, or along the whole life cycle of the products. Because the launcher event is one event, but before doing that launcher, to manufacture that launcher and to manufacture a satellite that we will launch, you need products, you need extraction of resources, you need water, you need energy, and that takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and then to exploit the satellite when it's launched, it also needs resources, it needs energy, it needs data, and so on. So we need to take care, all of us, about our own impact all over the life cycle. So it's really important to say that, not to focus on one single event of the life cycle. That's the first point. But coming back to your question, actually 2022 was a very bad year, so to speak, for the launcher industry in general. We lost the access to the Soyuz launcher at the beginning of the year with the war in Ukraine, and we had a failure of the Vega launcher at the end of the year in December. So it was already a crisis year in itself. And in the middle of the year, during the month of June, we have had some severe climatic events on one of our sites in Bordeaux, near Bordeaux. We've got a major hailstorm with hails the size of a tennis ball, approximately. Very big hails, which went through the roof, destroyed part of the production tools, crippled the sites for several weeks and months, and on top of that, people were affected. I have been affected. I've had some hails going through my roof. I've got water all over my living room, so I can tell by experience, and that really spoke to the employees. And if it was not sufficient, then a few months after, we've got wildfires in the southwest of France, huge wildfires near the Bordeaux area, not on our sites, hopefully, but close to our sites. So that really triggered a kind of wake-up call in plenty of people inside the company.
Yeah.
This was really important because before that, we had also, of course, roadmaps ongoing in order to reduce our own impact, to reduce our energy consumption, to reduce our CO2 impact. But then after that, plenty of people came to us and said, okay, but what can we do? I mean, okay, this is real. I mean, most of them had heard about it, but it was one of the first times they were directly struck in their daily life by such an event. In their production tools, in their daily life, they have been hit. And so they wanted to know what could they do. So we started to act. We were already working on mitigation, but we started to act on two very important axes. The first one is awareness. We started an awareness to all employees regarding climate change, ecological transition, and so we aim to have trained all employees by 2025, 100% of all our employees, and they were really happy about that. They were really happy that we address the problem, that we inform them about that, about the consequences, and what can they do in their everyday life, on top of what can they do within the industry as well. And we worked also on adaptation, because mitigation is one thing, but at some point also we will need to adapt and to get resilient. So we started some risk analysis about what could happen on our site and how we can adapt to these changes. So in a way, when people get very confronted to reality in their very daily life, in their core, that this triggers something. And I should say that in every crisis there is an opportunity. It was a crisis, of course, but this was the opportunity to mobilize against the people and to make them move in the right direction. So this has really triggered a kind of wake-up call.
Yeah, like in every bad event, we can do our lessons learned and grow up from it. But the thing is to do our lessons learned. And I'm happy to see that really Ariane Group, you have put in place these trainings. And not only, as you mentioned, this is quite a nice thing, not only in their professional life they're going to be trained, but as well giving them tips and tricks for their personal life. And it's a bit sad that we had to wait, that we were struck by such events to react. But at some point you need a wake-up call, as you said quite clearly.
We wanted to do that.
Yeah.
That was really the triggering event. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will turn as well. There are many triggering events in other domains, like in water. We talked about those different shortages, and there will be shortages in the future in water due to the climate crisis. Jean-François, you are an expert in water management, well-renowned, worldwide renowned, I could say. Do you think today that even though it is so clear and so obvious, there is a real political will to mitigate the risks linked to shortages of water? Is there this will existing at political level? You have been in several fora all across the world. What is your feeling about that as of today?
So, as Thomas said, floods, drought, waterborne disease, shortage, pollution, wastage, destruction of ecosystems. The seriousness of the situation in many countries require that a new management of freshwater resources be quickly implemented to preserve the future. Global warming exacerbates this situation and tensions as one of the first consequences.
You want to to show us? Okay.
Okay.
Some slides. Okay.
Global warming.
Time bomb.
The second one.
So a time bomb. Okay.
So global warming exacerbates this situation and tension as one of the first consequences is to increase the frequency and intensity of flood and drought, not only drought. It will be worse and worse very soon. Business as usual cannot continue, and we have to react immediately. Adaptation to freshwater management is urgently needed worldwide before it is too late. And quick actions will allow reducing cost and damage. We are worried about the unknown action cost. Of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, 9 are correlated with water, which proves the importance of water in human development and environment. European water policy today includes legal frameworks far ahead of most other regions of the world. The experience acquired by the EU for several decades now show that progress is possible, but require long times and very substantial multi-annual financial resources. Elsewhere in the world, there are leading countries such as Israel or Singapore, or others which are already well on the way to reform, but they are still too few. In too many countries, lack of political will, centralism, sectorialization, bureaucracy, weak financial mechanism, and sometimes corruptions, or more simply insufficient human resources and skill, delay urgent reforms. There, despite of the great speeches, in the absence of a modern institutional framework organizing an integrated water resources management, the strategy remains not clear, the projects are not developed, and the confidence of investors is not yet there. Even if innovation is even if innovation is always necessary, the main difficulties and constraints are not technological, but institutional, managerial, financial, and educational. Integrated water resources management must be implemented in all the countries of the world and be organized on the scale of local, national, and transboundary basins of rivers, lakes, and aquifers. Better managing water demand, water saving, leak detection, recycling, reuse of treated wastewater, groundwater recharges, desalination of seawater, adaptation of new crop varieties, research on low consumption use must become priorities. A new approach of water uses in agriculture should be looked for, as the farmer will be among the first victims of the variation of the climate. But we cannot manage what we cannot measure. Today, data in water sector, and information are too often dispersed, heterogeneous, incomplete, and are rarely comparable and adapt for objective decision-making. Information systems are priority tools to be implemented, and we need this kind of tool mainly for the countries where groundwater measurement facilities are not sufficiently developed or are difficult to access.
So data is very important.
No. The surface water ocean topography satellite, SWOT, will allow to measure the level and slope of main rivers and lakes, and to estimate the flow as well as precisely determine the level of the oceans. In conclusions, to answer your questions, nothing can be done in a short time, but adaptation will take several decades before having visible effect. Today, the financial resources devoted to the management of water resources are everywhere insufficient in the context of the current changes. Mobilization is essential to prepare the future. This is no science fiction. The solution exists and works in many basins in the world, mainly in the European Union. But today, it's useless to reinvent the wheel, as all the effective tools are available to move forward, if there is a political will to decide to do so. So let's get mobilized.
So you still keep the door open. There is some hope. If there is the political will, we can do actions. And thank you as well for mentioning, well, the fact, I think you're in line with what Professor Laetitia Thirion said about the fact that, okay, we can put in place things if there is no will behind from the higher spheres to push the implementation. I mean, we cannot go far. And thank you as well for mentioning the wastewater management, treatment, etc., because this is typically the circular economy projects we were talking about. We've put in place with our ESA lab, with the university Professor Thirion is working at. The engineering school she's working at, as a matter of fact. And you know that at ESA, or you might have heard about a project called Melissa. So I'm doing a bit of publicity here for my own agency. The project Melissa, which is a microecological life support system which really works in closed loop, where we are reusing, and we did it actually on the International Space Station, reusing to be in a closed loop, to be able to retreat urine, etc., grey water, yellow water, black waters, to retreat them and get some water for other uses. So this water recycling is definitely something super important, and it is the future. Now I would like to turn towards Hilde. Hilde, again, thank you so much. I find your initiative to come really a nice one, because you're outside the space sector. As I said, I mean, you work for one of the biggest oil and gas producers in the world, Equinor. And at the same time, well, one of the biggest also producers of greenhouse gases. Let's not, let's face the truth. Nevertheless, I'm happy that you're here, because it brings something to the debate. What concrete actions are you putting in place within your company? Because at some point there will be a transition you'll have to face, and towards also the new generation, to attract them. Because as we said, and as Laetitia said, I mean, we really have very violent. At least in France, I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but I can talk about my own country. We had some violent reactions where some students refused to have some oil producers on their sites. In the United States, I know at least that some big universities like Harvard or MIT have refused as well some funding from such companies. So they're refusing some funds. It is a big thing for such universities. But I know you're putting in place some concrete actions with your employees and also for the new generation. Can you tell us a bit about what you're putting in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. And indeed, as an energy company and as an oil and gas producer, we're very much at the sort of core of this polycrisis of climate change. Oil and gas, of course, is a big source of direct emissions, but more importantly, also a source of indirect emissions when our products are used in other sectors as well. And this is also why I believe energy companies have such an important role to play in tackling climate change, because to be able to really handle climate change, you also need to solve the energy question, and you need to decarbonize energy systems. And I think we've seen quite clearly, and particularly the last year, that we need to reduce emissions, but we also need reliable and secure supply of energy, and we need affordable energy. And today, 80% of the energy system is still based on molecules. So it's a massive task. And unfortunately, it will also take time, so there are no quick and easy solutions. It's going to be really hard work for energy companies, but also for all our consumers, all our customers. But I do believe that we can do something, and we are very focused on sort of putting in place actions. I believe this is a joint challenge for society. And we have technology, we have skills, we have employees who are very motivated to take part of this transition. We've worked for decades on reducing our own emissions. I think that's a very good starting point for any company anywhere in the world, and also for other institutions. In fact, if we all managed to reduce and eliminate our own emissions, problem solved. So that is, something very effective everyone can start working on. And from an industry-leading position on being an efficient, carbon-efficient oil and gas producer, we have set out an energy transition plan last year. It was something that was voted upon by our investors, an advisory vote at the general meeting. And we're now reporting on this every year. So it's a very public commitment, ambitions, and also accountability that comes with that. It's built on our strategy, which is to produce oil and gas, which we will need for decades still, with as low emissions as possible. It's about growing in renewables, which we need to replace fossil fuels. And it's about also developing low-carbon solutions so that the oil and gas that is needed for the hard-to-abate sectors can be decarbonized. So with carbon capture and storage, and with hydrogen solutions, for example. We've set out clear ambitions, and one of them is to reduce our own emissions with 50% by 2030. The other one is to change how we invest. And there we're really aiming for 50% of our investments to go to renewables and low-carbon solutions by 2030. And some think that's a lot, and some think that's too little. But up from 4% 2 years ago, I think it says something about the pace of change in the company. We're also looking for solutions to handle the emissions that are from the use of products, the so-called Scope 3 emissions. That's a lot tougher because you need to do it in partnerships with your customers. But we have what we call a net carbon intensity ambition to reduce, in a way, the overall emissions that come from the energy that we provide to society over time, towards net zero in 2050. We strongly believe that just cutting energy supply is not the best way to handle this crisis. It is to build out the solutions. So this is why we're very proud to have Dogger Bank, the world's largest offshore wind field. We'll start production this year with Equinor as the operator. And next year, we will see Northern Lights in Norway, the world's first open source carbon capture and storage plant, into operation. So actually capturing and transporting CO2 from other industries, such as cement, for example, or the waste industry, and then injecting it into reservoirs in the North Sea. And the capacity there is 1.5 million tons per year. And that is booked and overbooked, more or less. So that's full now. So I think the potential there is enormous. It's taken a long time to get there, but I'm really hopeful for that. So we try to show with these actions, and I've shown here the progress report, because we do report very openly on progress, and that creates a lot of discussion. You know, what's good enough? Is it fast enough, etc.? And I think a lot of the dialogue we have, particularly with students, but I would say with people of all ages, are around the pace of change. Because that's really what's too fast, what's too late, and how fast can you move as a company compared with society. But we really believe that being very transparent on where we are and what we have achieved and where the challenges are is really something that sparks a good discussion. So I think we can all do a lot, whether we're in the energy sector or in other sectors. You can handle your own emissions. You can be transparent about the emissions you have, and we have good help from the space industry there. But we can also use our voice, whether it's in how we procure, setting clear requirements, how we advocate for policies and regulations that are actually Paris-aligned, and then being very transparent on not only ambitions, but also on actually your results.
Thank you for mentioning the transparency, because indeed, I mean, it's a domain where we do expect some transparency, and I suppose the new generation as well expects it from you, and also to mention, you know, the policies to be put in place, because you are joining a bit what Jean-François said about the political will, and Laetitia as well, and I think this is, thank you for this openness, basically, and I'm impressed if you get by net zero until 2050, I wish for it really, and yeah, the investments as well, you mentioned how to invest in an intelligent way, question ourselves, is definitely not only for your area, but for any area for the future. This is something we have to tackle. Now I turn to you, Laurence, last but not least, because you are the head of sustainable development at CNES, as I said, and you deal on a daily basis with the industry, the space industry, with whom you procure your satellites, etc. And so you work closely, for example, with Thomas and with other industries. Do you think you as a space agency, and I'm also a space agency, so I also take it for me what you will say, what are we doing enough towards sustainability? Or do you think, are we doing enough ourselves? Is it, because we are also public organizations, and what things could we be putting in the future, but are we doing already enough today, maybe?
Well, I think I'm going to be really straightforward to everyone here, and we are far from doing what is necessary. Far from it. What we have been discussed in the last 2 days and a half is basically dedicated to all the great things we have been doing to help climate and to monitor climate. And it is true, for the last 30 years, the space industry has been doing a lot. It has helped the scientists, it has helped to define the modelization, to help to understand the climate, how it's working, and that is true. But that is 10 to 15% of the space sector activity, max. The rest of it is telecommunication, defense, and other type of activity which has nothing to do with saving the planet. So basically, for the last 2 days and a half, we have been congratulating ourselves for everything we've been doing, not discussing our own footprint. How many of us here do a GHG inventory every year or every other year and know exactly the weight of a salary in their company in terms of carbon footprint? I can tell you, for CNES, it's 27. It's massive, absolutely massive. And this is only scope 1 and 2. If I add the scope 3, we're above 100. By 2050, we have to go down to net zero. How many of us have actually planned very seriously the decrease of their carbon emission to be sure that they're going to be net zero in 2050? I'm afraid very little. Not only that, but we haven't asked ourselves if what we are planning for the next 30 years hundreds of new launches, hundreds of new satellites, are compliant with the limits, the boundaries of the planet? Are we asking ourselves together what we have to stop? Because it is not sustainable. It is not compliant with the planetary boundaries. This is what we should do. Spend 50% of the time in this type of conference saying how we are helping the planet, and spending 50% of our time how together we can actually organize ourselves to be net zero by 2050. What we have to stop. Come on, do we have to develop activities in space tourism? Do we have to develop Internet of Things? We know Internet of Things is not compliant with the planetary boundaries. It is not. Everybody knows that. So what are we doing? So basically, I'm calling urgently for, stop the denial. It's not because we're doing great things that it is sufficient for us. It is not. And if we don't decide it ourselves, if we don't say ourselves, the space industry, what we want to do, where we want to put the effort, everything we want to, how we want to be compliant, somebody else will decide for us. Politics or the society will tell us, okay, that's great. You have modelized the climate. Now it's done. We have enough data. Now we're going to put all this public money in helping the poor people who are dying because of drought. Or to have water, to have a great water system, because this is going to be a major issue and probably more important than us developing new Internet of Things, services. So if we want to be responsible, to keep our jobs, to be sure that the people working in our company still have a job in 20 years, we have to decide what we want to do, and we have to decide it collectively. Sorry, I'm really being blunt, but we cannot be in denial in a kind of don't look up fashion, which is kind of contradictory with what we're doing, honestly. I think we really want the next GLOC conference to be the start of something new for the industry, saying the space industry has a very important role to play, but it also has a footprint, and we have to be net zero by 2050. We have to.
Otherwise, we'll discourage our next generation. Thank you. Thank you so much for this energetic talk. And I would like maybe our other panelists to react maybe to what, maybe you, Thomas, because you're the industry and...
No, I'm fully in line with what Laurence is saying. I mean, it was the whole point of our panel yesterday, and it was the whole point of me telling before that we need to focus on the global life cycle and not specifically on the launcher or whatever. Everything that we do has a footprint. It's true. You cannot do anything without having a footprint. If you don't have a footprint, then you do nothing. So we need to address at each and every one of us what is our footprint, what are the impacts in terms of climate change, in terms of water consumption, in terms of resources consumption, in terms of all the impacts that we have, and to address them very, very, very carefully. Fully in line with what you're saying.
Laetitia, you are also nodding, so I think you are fully in line as well. You as a professor, dealing with the next generation on a daily basis, it is something which strikes you, yeah.
It's our responsibility to be coherent, to be reliable, otherwise the young generation will just run away from us. And I think we need to be together in order to try to solve these numerous issues.
So next GLOC, so this is for the GLOC organizers here. By next GLOC, we'll do some working groups where we all brainstorm together on how to change the space industry. It seems that the oil industry is doing fine because they have a transition plan and they're fine by 2025. But okay, we should already in our own home, which is the space business, try already to
just to complement on that, and regarding the young generation or whatever you call it, but for example, each time I go to a university school, or when I talk about space industry, the first question I get is not, wow, space satellites, great, that helped me with my cell phone, that helped me with my, I don't know, with monitoring the forest or monitoring the state of the planet. The first question I get is, what is your impact? And,
space debris as
yeah,
well. I get it
space
very
debris
often
as well. Yeah.
when I go to
and
lecture.
why do you want? Why do some of us want to go do space tourism, something like that? So the first question is about the impact, not about all the benefits that space can bring, which everyone agrees about that as well. No offense about that, but that's the question of the impact. Yeah.
So based on this reaction, I would like to ask you a question. Okay, so we know that the situation is maybe not as pink as it should be, and you said it quite directly, I would say, Laurence. Then let's say you're a king or a queen of a day, okay? You have the power of changing things. What would be your first action? Who wants to take on the floor? Okay, Hilde, go ahead.
I can start. And first of all, very also loved what we heard right now, but because we do need this action and really looking at our priorities in every sector, every industry sector. But if I were king, a global king or queen of, I would actually start with a global CO2 tax, which will probably never happen, but there is something about making the fiscal system and economic system also work for the environment. So we've seen that work extremely well in Norway, and I think it would have changed a lot.
Thank you. Global CO2 tax. Jean-François, you wanted to react as well?
Just look, Trump will not be re-elected.
Trump will not be re-elected.
And maybe we pray to have a new parliament in the European Union.
To pray for a new parliament.
The climato-sceptic will not be there.
The climato-sceptics are not there, okay.
Because 2030, it's in 7 years.
It's true,
So
2030.
clearly, I share your advice.
Tomorrow.
It will be very short.
Indeed.
Even 2050. So we have to look at maybe the end of the century if we react immediately. So click, we react immediately. And we have money and institutional tools for doing it.
You as a king, that's what you would be doing. And money and institutional will to push things now. Okay, thank you. Anyone? Laetitia, yes, go ahead.
Yes, maybe I think that it's okay that companies are here to make money. It's important for them. But maybe if I were the queen of the day, I will oblige them to add a new mission. It's to contribute to a better life, an obligation for them, how they contribute to a better life.
So ask every single company, how do they contribute to a better life? Let it be for their employees, but also...
Yeah. They show how they contribute, not only to make money.
Not only to make money, so not be only profit-oriented, but having an obligation
Exactly.
towards creating a better life. Thomas, Laurence?
Yeah, I can go for it. I would, in quite the same vein, I guess, I would make that at the international level, maybe the UN level. Thanks to the COPUOS or whatever organization, international organization can do that. An international agreement like the Space Treaty we had in '67 at the same kind of impact, engaging the whole space community to stop to develop everything which is not within the planetary boundaries.
So IoT, etc. Internet of Things, and yeah. Okay. Obliging the whole space community to really adhere to these new laws. Thomas?
Each time we have discovered a new source of energy, we have never got rid of the old ones. That each time we had woods, and then coal, and then fossil, and then nuclear. But each time we found a new source of energy, we never get rid of the old ones. So my first law as a king of the world would be to ban one old source of energy, which is coal. Which is today a horrible disaster in terms of CO2 impact all over the world. So to stop coal all over the world, stop coal production, coal factories or whatever.
Okay, that's definitely something we're going to go towards, but maybe not as of today, unfortunately. But you're the king of the day, so you can choose it.
Well, we will lack electricity, of course, but we'll live through it.
So now I would like to turn to the public, because we still have 5 minutes. We have also a microphone, so is there someone who wants to react in the public, to be as direct as Laurence, or to have a question to challenge maybe also the panelists here? Please, Leo, Leo McKay, Chief Sustainability Officer from Lockheed Martin.
Well, I had a question, but I'm going to change it.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I was surprised by the tone of the discussion. And I guess in the theme of being uncomfortable, you know, what would this panel say to the global south? The black, brown, and yellow people, 1 billion or more of which that are emerging from poverty and need energy resources to do that. You know, in your statement about, you know, we all got to buckle down, we got to stop producing, stop consuming. Those people are just starting, and it's not about luxury. It's about subsistence, and it's about emerging from poverty. So what does the developed North say to the global South in that construct?
Who wants to respond?
I can answer to that. This
Laurence?
question has been raised during the last COP, and you're right, there are 2 answers to that. The poor people are the first one who are suffering a lot. All the vulnerable countries and all the people you're mentioning are suffering a lot more than the northern people about climate crisis, a lot more. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the decision of the mobilization of the northern country in order to help them to develop in a sustainable way has been discussed a lot during the last COP, and the decision has been taken and it has been quite controversial to create a specific fund to help them to develop, and this by using renewable energy and to help them to do so. One cannot say that we are going to continue to expand GHG emission, which has a very terrible effect on those population, just because we think we need to help them. This would not be the best way to help them. What is true is that we have to cut our GHG emission a lot more than they do. And this compensation system has to be done at the international level. That's true. But we have to help them out that way, but not by developing continuously GHG emission with fossil energy.
Thank you, Laurence. Are you convinced, Leo? No? Go ahead, speak. We want controversial ideas here.
I mean, I'm an American. We learned we were second-generation imperialists after the Europeans, but talking about what we must do for the global South without involving them, I mean, what about their self-determination? What about their ability to choose for themselves? What about their ability to work their way, create their own wealth?
I don't see how this is contradictory with what I'm saying. I don't see how.
Well,
you
said
why?
all these things we were going to do for them, or money we're going to, it just sounded horribly paternalistic.
No, it's not. I mean, we can have a longer conversation about that, but I don't think why it's contradictory with what I'm saying about cutting the GHG emission at on the northern country, which is actually 100 times more than what they emit themselves. So they have a lot. They can, if we cut a lot, they can emit more. That's at the international level. That's how the balance is organized, and that's how the COP is discussing the different level of cutting emission we have to do in the north compared to the other countries. I don't see how paternalistic it is.
So that's a very interesting debate, and maybe we can take it also offline outside afterwards. Leo, we count on you. Indeed, because, I mean, as you said, Laurence as well, these are the countries which are most suffering as well from the climate. They're not only the ones who should use the energy and who want to develop, but it's unfortunately the same countries who are suffering the first ones from the climate events. We're touching almost to an end, and nevertheless, I want a message of hope, you know, and that's why. So can I ask you, in a very short sentence, every one of you, to give a message of hope to this next generation? Who wants to start? Hilde, can you start?
Well, that's a tough one, but I do think, you know, we have no choice but to try and figure out, and this is really a triple challenge. It's climate, it's nature, and it's inequality, that as was mentioned. So we need to handle all of this at once, and I think avoiding polarization, but actually working together, collaboration will be the key word.
collaboration, international partnerships. Yes, go ahead,
Yes,
Jean-François.
I am not really optimistic. But if you want,
I oblige you to give a message of hope to the next generation.
yes,
Come on.
I may say that at this moment, as far as the water sector is concerned, we have all the tools we need to
Okay,
go ahead. We have to implement it.
okay.
It's possible.
It's possible.
So like an advertising say, just do it.
Just do it. Just do it. This is the message of hope, and we have all the tools necessary. Thomas.
Well, the sentence is not for me, but I really support that. I think that space will not save the planet, but the planet will not be saved without space. So I think we definitely should reflect on that and make sure that space is the right tool and a sustainable tool in itself
And a sustainable
to save the planet.
Yes, space business as a sustainable tool. Thank you.
I will join Hilde for collaboration. I think international collaboration is really important, and we have already demonstrated that it is possible. We have chosen and we have managed to reduce the hole due to
The ozone hole, huh?
ozone hole. Yes,
Yes.
thank you. We have managed to do that at a global scale.
Yeah.
So I think we are able to do that for climate change.
So we have the tools as well, as Jean-François said. Laurence, please be positive.
I'm very positive. I mean, I'm working really every day to try to make it work. So I'm really positive, and I think I witness every day people coming to me, at least in our company, but even in the other industry, a lot of people coming to me saying, "What can I do? What can I do?" Just like Thomas was saying, every day I've got people saying, "In my daily work, what can I do?" And
Okay.
I think with this, well, there's certainly hope.
There are things to do then. Thank you so much. A round of applause for my panelists. Thank you.